So you're back again for part 2.
Yay.
So thank you for joining for my first in-person one.
This is the first one?
Yeah, most of them have been over that Riverside Zoom thing, so you're my first like in-person conversation.
I am honored.
Yeah.
This is exciting.
So fill us in. Tell me about. You talked about it a little bit last time, but now that it seems like your journey is a little fuller, you can say, because I don't think you went to the like iconography like retreat center out in South Carolina when I talked to you, and so tell us how the transition has been from being like a quote unquote secular artist that was, just you're making animation style work and just like general characters and stuff, from making things like, Daphmina, is that one? Dimphna.
Yeah.
And then you made, like we talked in my previous podcast, you made St. Morgan for me.
Yeah.
And so like, how has the journey and transition been, and how is it different from making just like an Aladdin type character for an animation versus like a saint?
Where to begin? Yeah, so the last time I was here, I was painting a lonely Irish princess saint. And now that I'm back, I was another lonely Irish princess saint. But like you said, the transition has really blossomed. And I feel like I'm kind of going from a student to finding my voice, and also seeing in the world how there is this desire for iconography in like young people. Like I posted a video of me painting Christ Pantocrator on TikTok, and it went viral, and it's just full of comments from kids like all over the world going, I want to learn how to paint iconography. But the main thing that they say is like, I don't know where to go, I don't know where to find teachers, I don't know where to find resources. And I think a lot of the few iconographers that are on social media are starting to come out, even though there is this kind of temptation to think, oh, I need to train more, I'm not holy enough, or I have to go to some secluded mountain somewhere and study this like some kind of like martial art. But it's actually more personal than that. And even though you do want to, stay within certain boundaries of theological and artistic, you know what I mean? It's more like the world would be a better place with more iconographers, I think. I think the more imagery there is of people painting Jesus and Mary, even if it's not perfect or super theologically sound, I do think the world would be a better place. And I'm super excited to see that young people are super interested in this, because it really is the antidote to what we deal with on our phones all the time, especially with young people who have been raised in that. Icons are a way for them to kind of get away from this window and go into that window and really just use their imaginations and develop these relationships with saints and angels and Jesus and Mary. And to be a part of that is just so exciting and fills me with so much hope. And I just want to like proclaim to the world like icons. So you said that, in our modern landscape of art, you said there's a little bit of more like theological rules and stuff behind making an icon. Mm-hmm. In the modern world, that art should be completely unrestricted, right? It should just be do whatever you want. Yeah.
So how are you not like, wow, there's like rules to this? Like it doesn't seem like you're like, oh, this prevents me from being an artist. It seems to like draw you more deeply into that. Why do you think that is?
Yeah. It's like the further along I get, the more I feel like I have to learn. But at the same time, when you first start any artistic endeavor, whether it be like film or writing or painting, it's like you have to learn the rules before you can break them. And I feel like I'm finally getting to a point where I can kind of go outside of the rules. Like when I went to that Orthodox icon painting workshop, it's like we learned like there's all these Greek terms for every single layer of skin in the face and the colors that you mix, and I think it's really good to know, but I didn't do any of that with this. And this, I was able to kind of just take my own journey and apply it to the bumpers provided by the thousands of years of tradition. And that I think is really beautiful, because those are my favorite iconographers, the ones who started off as like fairy tale illustrators or Soviet painters, and then they take their experiences and put them into a scene of Christ's life or in the Theotokos, or it's just so I think that's what artists really need now, after the past 50 years of having art industrialized and easily manufactured with like animated films and advertising. And artists have gone from being valued members of society to kind of just cogs in a machine. And art has really lost its value over the years, you know what I mean? Like, just here in America, most cities are just hideous and just everyday. Like, this is beautiful. Like, here, this is like an old building where care has been put into the ceiling and the chandelier and the stone that was picked for the fireplace. And when I'm in these beautiful windows and I'm in this place, and I feel just energized. But if you go to like an average dentist's office that's like gray and square and straight lines, and you just like get used to that, you drive down the highway and there's like these ugly billboards with like stupid ads everywhere, and that just wears down your soul.
It basically tells you don't matter.
Yeah, and then we have this mental health crisis, and people are all sad and don't have any self-worth, and it's like, let's bring back the color, let's bring back the joy, let's bring back the energy, because that's been part of my journey. I've been like praying to God to give my artwork depth, and he gave that to me, and it was really horrible. And that's why when you, like, all the best songs and books are all written by people who have suffered in their own ways. And now that I'm kind of like climbing out of that hole, I'm like, I want to put so much color and energy into my icons. And I think that really particularly speaks to children, because they haven't lost that light yet. And this is kind of like derailing, but like the best cartoons that we grew up with in the 90s, those were all made mostly by parents who came up with these ideas by telling stories to their kids. Like Toy Story was probably one of the directors telling the story to their kid at night, and they're like, oh, that would make such a great film that millions of kids would be interested. Because every kid has thought at one point, like, do my toys come to life at night? Or even Tolkien, like, all of his stories came because he would tell them to his kids.
And his wife, too.
And his wife, and draw from inspiration on his life. And he put that into, like, a whole new world that he was able to make. And now we've kind of come to this, like, dead end in society where family isn't valued anymore. Like, we were just talking about the new Lilo and Stitch movie, which is completely just straight up said, like, you know, Disney doesn't care about family values anymore. And it's all directed by people like millennials who don't have children. So if you don't have children to kind of share your ideas with, you just put your political opinions into stories, and it makes it super lame. And we're all seeing that now, and it's just like poisoning society. So I don't think that answered your question at all. But the point is, like, yes, let's bring back.
You know, I mean, you mentioned a lot of good stuff there. I mean, I also think it's interesting when you say that there should be a lot more like color and involve like just more beauty in the world. Mm-hmm. And I also think that in terms of clothing, like, you know, even going to like mass or divine liturgy or something, everybody wears like a suit and tie. Mm-hmm. But a suit and tie is also like such a modernist thing, right? Like, it flattens everybody to look the same. Like, if you think of a man, all of them are wearing a gray or black suit with a red or blue tie.
We should bring back cloaks.
Like cloaks, but also, if you think about all the cultures around the world, right? Like their traditional clothing, like you have the Scottish with like their kilts, and like they wear like these belts with like feathers or something on them and pouches, or you go to Poland and or any Eastern European country, they have all these floral patterns and stuff on them. And so like, I feel like the way you're meant to dress to go to church would be more closely like dressing to what is appropriate for like the culture you grew up in, right? And so like, it would be cool to see like even like somewhere here, which for context for anybody watching this, we're at St. John Chrysostom's Malkai Church. And so like it would be interesting to see like like all the Arabic families or Lebanese families like wear their traditional garbs, and like I'm like a Polish dude and I would wear like the floral thing or whatever.
And if people had
like,
a reason to do it, they would.
Yeah.
Like it's like, oh, where am I going to wear my kimono or my?
Yeah, you go to church in it, right? And
yeah, it's like I can wear it to church.
And then church becomes like colorful and interesting. You have like all this culture and stuff that flows in, but we're all united in like the worship at the altar, right? So there's like differentiation through like color and expression, but it's all like united together into like a single body, like body of the church. It's almost like these things matter.
I love this
then
idea.
it goes to, and it all worships God.
What would be a traditional Slavic or Polish outfit that you could wear? Like, what does that even look like?
It depends what region. So every region has different ones, but they're mostly kind of like button-up looking shirts with a floral pattern on them. So they have a lot of like red and blue flowers with like the green viney looking type things, or some of them have like a ornamentation just going down the collar here. So it's like, blue, it's hard to describe. They're like just lines
like
and
the
squiggles
folk
and stuff.
painting that they have on, like when you look at like Polish houses and like the
a
door
little
frames.
bit something like that,
but in a
something
vest,
like that,
kind of.
yeah.
And
so
you should
have,
rock that from now on.
And then if you go down to the mountainous region, like something like Zakopane, they also have this like wide brim black hat with seashells around the, there's the bowl on it, and then the thing, and then around the bowl there's these little seashells that go around. And so, but yeah, I mean, to the point, like we all come in dressed in the same, right? And so like it's no, so the most important thing obviously is like making sure we're there to worship God, but that's not to mean that we have to like not express ourselves or like our identities in different ways through doing that. And I think that then if you go like that to church, then that expresses itself in other art forms. Like you were saying, like buildings maybe would look more beautiful because people would feel a sense of wanting to, like all these people are dressing in all these intrinsic outfits, then we need to have buildings that match that. Whereas like, if you're just wearing a hoodie and jeans and like walking around, like why would you build anything beautiful for that? And you see, it's interesting because as you saw the degradation of like the beauty in buildings, then people stopped dressing up for it because there was almost a loss for reverence, right? Because when something's beautiful, you also want to be beautiful to respect that beauty. And so like there's a sense of reverence that goes with that.
That reminds me of like something with that I've noticed in icon painting processes. Like the first icon I really painted, it was super simple, but it was Our Lady of Guadalupe. And I went really slow because painting, you have to build up your stamina. So I couldn't be too detailed in the beginning because I get so burnt out. But with Our Lady of Guadalupe, I was doing a lot of research on like the land of that area of Mexico. And when I did that, I realized how much culture is really, this seems really obvious, but just influenced by nature. So like Native American art in New York is going to be influenced by the trees or the way the skies look at sunset, or the colors there are going to be very different than it is in Poland, or in like Russian art. The forests are very different than the forests in Ireland, which are more zany, which you can really see in the metalwork or the way that they, like in the Book of Kells, the way they draw people. Like Irish people typically have like really big sparkly eyes. You can really see that in their artwork, whereas it's different all over the world. And I think we're so disconnected from nature now. Like we spend so much time in little Tupperwares, like our cars or our smart houses or our cubicles, that's another thing that's kind of disconnected us from who we are and our self-worth. And it's weird too, because here we are in the US and none of us are really American. Like if you go to Poland, you're probably gonna feel some deeper spiritual experience than you would in Marietta, Georgia. Same with me if I went to Europe. But, we're still human. And we're on this planet that God gave us. So if you spend time in nature, you can get so much inspiration from that. And that's something I think artists are also slowly waking up to, is that we've been kind of treated like sweatshop workers for however many years, or at least as long as I've been in the industry, where you're just under fluorescent lighting, you're working on a digital computer, you're not even doing anything tangible. Everything is mass produced and going to be forgotten the second it's aired. So, and on top of that, spirituality has been completely sucked out of it. Like, everything has to be completely materialist. So I've said this before, and I say it again, I think the AI takeover is going to be a blessing in a way. Like, if that isn't too spicy to say, but...
A blessing in what way?
That all of these sweatshop workers are going to be unemployed, of course, but also free from basically this slavery. Like, when you look at anime studios, like, those are like abysmal conditions for anybody, let alone creative people. And the thing that's crazy is, if work is the religion of these people, then there's just, the art is going to reflect that. You see a lot of these shows where it just looks like the people are just drawing with, like, I feel like that sometimes when I paint. Like, I have moments where this is not fun and not creative, and I'm just like, I just have to finish painting this dragon so that it's done. Like, I'm not having fun or having any magical experience with this like I am when I do her eyes or her hair or her hands. Like, you kind of have this high when you first start, and then towards the end you're just running on fumes. And that's just the way it is being a human in a restricted body. But there's like none of that in some of this stuff that you see. So I think that's like, we're kind of at the tail end of like a dark time, but eventually I think there's going to be like this, the pendulum's going to swing, and there's going to be like this huge renaissance. And you can see it with like young people who are just fed up, and they've known nothing different than TikTok and smartphones. And they're going to just want to start painting and getting their hands messy, and the things they're going to make with the perspective that they have. I'm so excited for Gen Alpha. I have so much hope in them.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
I actually want to bring back something you said also about like millennials not making art like for their children because they don't have any, and so they end up making political propaganda. And so what's interesting about that is the highest, you can say like the highest form of participation is through a marriage is one way, right? Where you're co-creating with God and making children, right? And then from there, the rest of the creativity flows because you want to make the life as best as you can and more as fun as you can and magical as you can for your child. What's interesting actually is I heard on another podcast somewhere where they were saying that the reason actually that there's so much nostalgia work being done now instead of like new art forms is because millennials didn't have enough kids to create a market for that, and millennials are actually the larger market, and so they're gearing all these films and different things for millennials because they're still the ones that are buying that content. Whereas like if you had the reason why new music would be made and new artists and stuff is because they're the next generation, like the art would be made for them. But because the market's so small from the next generation, it's almost like not worth making. I know it's like overly capitalistic to say, but it kind of makes sense in a way, right? Like if you don't have enough generation to participate or want to participate with like the culture or whatever, it's not going to grow, right? Like it's a dying thing. And so that's why you have like Little Mermaid being made again, and like Lilo and Stitch, and like all these other Disney's movies, is because it's all that, you know, there's no new generation that's, you can say, like asking for new content. It's just millennials walking in again and watching the same thing because it's
that
like, I want
so
nostalgia.
Much sense.
And so in a sense, by not being creative, procreatively through like sexual relationships and stuff, it actually harms the rest of the art form going down the chain. So like our modern culture thought with women or men, like, oh, if I get married or like if I have children, it's going to interfere with my artwork ability. But it actually had the opposite effect, because like you said, now instead of making art that is like beautiful, that enchants a child's heart and also an adult's heart through that innocence of a child, it's like,
just jaded
how am
adults.
it's like, how am I gonna show my cynicism of the modern world, or like how am I gonna stick it to the man or the government? And so it all makes it feel flat because it's like, oh, you're just criticizing the modern government, but we can all just do that anyway.
That's so true. Because I'm guilty of that. I love nostalgia. Like, I've gotten to a point where I'm with my brother and we're like rewatching Disney movies. I'm like, it's kind of weird that we're not doing this with children. You know, it's like you need to have a kid soon because otherwise I feel kind of like that, like nostalgia. It doesn't always feel good. It's kind of depressing sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, didn't Jonathan Pajot do a whole video about Lot's wife and the dangers of nostalgia, which it does feel like millennials are kind of stunted in a lot of ways.
Yeah, no, that's actually a good point because like there's an aspect, it's funny because there's an aspect of like looking forward and moving forward with God through like his creation and stuff. And so like if you look back, you like stunt yourself because you're constantly grabbing from what's behind, which is kind of like Lot's wife looking back at Sodom and then like turning into a pillar of salt, right?
Yeah.
But then you have the same thing happen to was her Lot, right? Was her husband? No, yeah, Lot's wife. So Lot then in the biblical story sleeps with his two daughters,
Right.
And that's also a similar image of nostalgia where you're having a creative relationship with yourself, like it's your own offspring, your seed. That's right, and so that's why it's kind of like you have like when you think about something. I know it's gross, but like when you think about incense, it's like too much of the same thing, right? It's almost like you're making love to yourself, and so you stagnate or you kind of birth blobs.
Well, that was her story.
So
like her dad was trying to marry her because he wanted to, at the grief from his wife passing, he wanted someone just like her. So his advisor said, go for your daughter, which wasn't unusual in pagan society. Like that's how you continue bloodlines and alliances or whatever. But she wanted to give herself to Christ and essentially be a nun. So she left her home and the thing that I was really trying to focus on with Dymphna, because I always try to look at whoever I'm painting an icon, I'm trying to look at it from a different angle so that it's more relevant to me, but also gives new life to the story. And with her, I thought a lot about how, because she's the patroness of mental health, and so schizophrenia, anxiety, incest or rape survivors, and what that boat journey would have been like. You know, your mom is dead, your mom who gave you your faith, so there was that, and then her father who is trying to do the unimaginable, and that loss of family, how easy it could have been for her to just despair in that moment. Like you lose everything, you lose your home and your family, and you know, she was a princess, she lost everything. And it kind of goes back to that question, like the suffering problem. Like if God loved me, like why are all these bad things happening to me? But the good thing about Dymphna, you know, it happened so long ago. It was like the year 700-ish. And we can look back now on the fruits of that suffering without giving too much away right away. But like, yeah, eventually he caught up to her and beheaded her and her confessor, Saint Garabron, if I'm saying that correctly. And where she died to this day is still a mental health phenomenon. Like if you Google Giel, Belgium, where she died, there's articles by the New York Times, the WHO, the NPR, like the National Mental Health Institute, all noting how the success rate of their treatment of mental health is just so unusual. And the difference is that they treat the mentally ill like family. And I've heard before somewhere how homelessness is like the number one cause of homelessness is the catastrophic loss of family. And that, like we're talking about with animated films, and people aren't telling stories to their kids because they don't have any kids, and how that mental health crisis is kind of following suit of that. And my point is that her trauma was able to be used for good that is still continuing to this day, and how God can use our suffering to do work greater than we can imagine. And it all boils down to her, just her faith, and that, I mean, maybe there were times she wanted to despair. And that's what I love about these old saint stories, like with Morgan, where it's like you can kind of fill in the gaps with your imagination because it was so long ago. It's like, what was it like for Morgan in that cave? Did a goddess appear to her? Like, did her dog turn into an otter? Like, that's crazy. But you can go into more of those like deeper, just like using your imagination and how that can be applied to reality. And that's what I learned with her. It was like, my suffering matters, my forgiveness matters, and yeah, I love her. She's so powerful.
Yeah, it's also, the thing is like, reality is actually so weird. I think because we've been so overly scientific and materialist that it gives us like doubts of like extraordinary things. And so like, I wouldn't be surprised if like Morgan's dog actually did turn into an otter, or like she actually did see like some sea witch. I mean, we were talking off camera about like there's autistic children with telepathic abilities.
Yeah.
Which I recommend everyone check it out. It's completely crazy. It's called the Telepathy Tapes. And this documentary filmmaker goes around the country like talking to the parents and the children of these kids and stuff. But so like if something like that is possible, like it does it and then there's like almost like smaller miracles you can say. Like there's that guy, I don't know if you know him, there's this guy Wim Hof that like climbed the Mount Everest in nothing but his swim trunks and survived, right? Whereas many people like have all the gear and stuff and never make it up the mountain at all, right? And so like hearing stories about how the memories of the saints like continue to ripple today or something like that does not surprise me when there's like people today doing extraordinary things that science can't understand, right? And so it's like, reality is a lot weirder than we like to make it out to be, right? There's definitely a lot of strange things in life.
Even secular scientific people are noticing, like, you know, people are talking about aliens now and the things that AI is starting. It's like, you know, things are getting kind of funky after years of life being really boring and materialist. And then when you read the Bible and read about like Nephilim or, you know, Saul summoning Samuel's ghost and all these things, it's like we still live on that planet. It's just we've paved over it and put in a parking lot. And
we do Ouija boards and stuff like.
Yeah, but it's the same world. It's just we've just become so jaded
and blind to it.
Yeah, and I've always wanted to believe, like that's kind of what started my journey back to God, is like I wanted to believe in magic so bad. And then when I lived in LA and I would hear kind of similar things to like you're saying with telepathy tapes, like just hearing people in the woodwork going like, there's a cult that time travels in Italy, or this one guy down the street can make things levitate. I'm like, fine, yes, this is what I've wanted my whole life. I want to believe in mermaid otter dogs and angels and giants and stuff. But if you say that, you sound insane. Like you sound mentally ill. I acknowledge that. It's a journey. And maybe it's symbolic, maybe there's all this stuff, but it's like, I believe in the Eucharist. Like that's the craziest thing ever. Like when I'm in adoration, looking at the host, and I'm like, I believe that's the flesh of a god. That's insane. Like mermaids don't even come close to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's exciting to be alive.
Yeah, sometimes it's fun to say like, when people ask me like how my Sunday was or something, I say like I ate God today. So
yes, that's so metal.
Yeah,
that could be like an album name, like eating the flesh of God. Like I would be if I would stop worshiping Odin or Zeus to do that. Like they don't eat God flesh.
They try to. I mean it's always so hard, especially with people with more like fundamentalist, like Protestant beliefs, because there's a tendency, and I know some Catholics that kind of would fall into this camp too. There's a tendency to like, evil wants to be like the good, right? So there's a very close replication to it. So as an example, if it is right to worship your king or God by kneeling and bowing down to him, the devil is obviously going to want the same thing. He's going to want to be knelt and bowed down to. But that doesn't mean that kneeling in front of something is inherently evil, right? It's a way where it can participate with something greater than ourselves. And so like, when we were talking about earlier about nature and interacting with it and stuff, a lot of people may think like, oh, these hippy dippy like artist people, but that's how a lot of the faith has formed, right? Like they didn't have computers and things like that, so they had to interact with what was around them, and they didn't live in a globalist world where like Polish people can easily pretend like they're Greek and eat Greek food or something. Like they had what they had, and so the traditions revolved around that. And the false thinking is that like Christianity came in and was like, oh, you guys are doing it all wrong, like you have to do it this way. But that's not true. They actually, for the most part, kept what they did. They just, you can say, baptized it into re-gearing their purpose from like the worshiping trees or these lower things to be like, there's a higher calling, right? You can God. So like, instead of worshiping these trees, shift that worship from the trees to God, and maybe even use those trees in some way to show reverence to Him, right? And so, because I always see these crazy things of like Protestant pointing out that like a pope has a scepter with two snakes, and they're like, oh, this is a satanic symbol or and stuff like that. But then, if that's true, then God had, there's that image of the serpent around the tree, right? And then later there's the serpent on the bronze sculpture, and Christ says he's a serpent and things like that. So there has to be a different meaning or a reason that we interact with the serpents, and it's kind of showing us this pattern in the Bible and stuff. So there's like a lot going on there. But I wanted to rewind a little bit. We got to talk about so much stuff. But in iconography, from my understanding, there's a much more reverent approach to the image you're about to create than, for example, if an artist was just going to get hired by Disney and make a Stitch or something, right? So I hear that there's a fasting element involved when you're painting an icon, kind of like prayer and different things like that. How does that change the experience for you as you're painting? And do you use a little bit of that at all when you do any of your own work that maybe isn't religious in nature, or something more, you can say, a passionate project opposed to?
I haven't done anything non-religious in a while, now that I come to think of it. It's kind of consumed me. I actually want to get better at that, because the few times that I have really prayed and fasted and really isolated myself while I was painting have been really fruitful, versus like when I went to the iconography workshop in South Carolina last year, we were drinking wine and eating a lot of cake and like goofing off. And if God could work through us then, I can only imagine how much better my icons would be if I was isolated on a mountain. But that's just another testament to how merciful God is, because I've come to realize I can't do anything without Him. I've had moments where I knew I should have been working on an icon or doing something more productive, and I wanted to, I feel like painting a deer, and I will get so spiritually attacked if I'm not on schedule. I'm not saying that's gonna happen forever. It might have just been that blip in my training, but I feel so much more filled with purpose now than I did before, where I think creative people, and maybe you feel this a lot too, you kind of get lost in the sauce where you're like, oh, I need to study, I need to get better at doing this before I can do that. I have to be a perfectionist, which is, pride and evil and stuff. And what was the question?
How does, the question was kind of like how, being that there's a more ritual involved when you're making an icon through fasting and prayer, how that affects your art now?
I guess it comes with spiritual maturity over time, and as my relationship with God has improved, and I've become aware of it improving, because I didn't realize just how far I had to go before, but being more aware of God's mercy as well as how helpless I am without Him, because I truly am just a conduit. I can't do it without, I'm sorry. I cannot do it. I'm just a conduit, because it is that I'm not a creator, I'm a co-creator. I can't just make a baby out of dirt. I have to invoke something else I can't breathe a soul into anything. And painting, I've come to really feel like it is so similar to motherhood. And as I've been improving my relationship with Mary, or uppercase Mary, Our Lady, she has really shown me what womanhood really is, and how any creative pursuit, like we were talking earlier about God encompassing the feminine, so even men can experience this, obviously. But when I'm painting, it does feel like a pregnancy, where I'm growing something that's taking life and taking shape. And it's not always fun. It's not always pretty. There are times where I'm just miserable, even with an icon, where I cannot get the face right. It doesn't look like Jesus, and I know it's not Jesus. And people walking by will be like, "What a beautiful painting of Jesus." I'm like, this is not Jesus yet. I just know it in my bones, because this is my interaction with him, and I won't be happy until it's just right. And it's the same with the face. The countenance is the most important part to me. And with this painting, I just was stuck in limbo for weeks, where it's like, it's almost done. I just have to push through and finish like this hand or these little details. And it became so tedious. And then today, like a few hours ago, I finally was like, I'm done. The baby's ready to go. Like I can go no further. And now I kind of just feel like this, like, what am I going to do with my life now? Just kind of this almost blissful listlessness. And it's not going to be fully, I don't want to say consummated, but it's not going to be done until she's with her new family. Like, I am the surrogate mother. She's going to go to her home and do her work. I think of Hannah. I'm all over the place. I think of Hannah and Samuel. It's like she prayed and prayed and prayed for a child just to give him away back to God as a testament of her faith. And I have this battle with every icon where it's like, I finally finished it. I want to keep it for myself, but I have to let it go and fly away and do its work. So, yeah, very co-creative.
Yeah, everything you said, it makes sense. I mean, to some aspect, you can think about like Mary having to give her son to the cross, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what the whole story is of the sorrowful mother, of like, she loves him dearly and would love to keep him, but she can't. Like, she has to let him go on his mission of his like purpose being there. And so you as an artist, in a sense, is doing the same thing, right? Like, you're creating something for a purpose, and at some point you have to let it go and let it do its like.
Which is like the archetype of the mother versus the witch. So the mother, pushes the babies out of the nest, which is a selfless love, versus the witch who locks it in a tower and steals its power for herself.
Or eats them.
Or eats,
right?
yeah.
And it puts it into her, like makes it part of herself by eating them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I realized. I was like, I am like Rapunzel's mom, just wanting to lock my babies in a tower, but I have to let them go and have their own life. And that is true. That's motherhood. That's like positive femininity. I don't know.
Well, what's funny about this whole talk about feminine and masculine is that, like, as human, like, our bodies have a clear expression of the feminine or masculine, but then when we interact with the world, like, we both men and women interact with the world in both masculine and feminine ways.
Yeah.
So like that's why like we're called like the bride, like the bride of Christ, like we go to the bridegroom because we are the bride, we are the church, right? The church is called the bride of Christ, and the church is the body of Christ, and we make up that body. And so both men and women are a bride to Christ, and it's hard to understand that, but like we all receive the Eucharist, right? So there's an aspect of consummation that happens there.
Yeah.
So like we eat of him and he enters into our body, but we don't, it's not necessarily the creation in that aspect isn't that it creates like a separate body or a new body, but it's to transform our own bodies to be more like his, right? And so
Wow.
Our faith, what the key, I've always been like really curious about, like, what is it really that all this stuff we're talking about, like, what is it? And at the end of the day, our faith is like incarnational, and meaning creative. So like, if you follow as close as you can, I mean, we're all wretches and sinners, but like if you follow as close as you can, there's an aspect of creation and life-giving, like be fruitful and multiply kind of thing that happens. Whereas if you're just not doing that, you're actually causing the opposite. You're causing death and destruction as you go. You're trying to eat, right? And so like, if you think about like an iconographer, I mean, it's not just it's not like iconographers are the only artists that are like creating life-giving works, but there's artists that gear something towards a purpose beyond their own embetterment, or like for just like, this is my brand, like this is my artwork kind of thing. You just look at it, but this is mine. But do you feel like any artist, I mean, like filmmaking can be iconographic? No, I mean, I can for sure. I mean, it's all story, like storytelling is, you can say like a form of art too. I just view it differently, where I view like art is, you have to have a purpose for it, right? And I also believe that there should be an element of participation with that art. Yeah. So like, if you look at a museum, it's just like you go in and you just look at stuff. Whereas like, if truly artistic things like icons, you pray, you use them as an instrument in prayer, you interact, like the painter also interacts with the story and like learns about it. There's a prayer and fasting involved. There's a whole series of participation and ritual that happens. Yeah. Whereas the other part is like, I just made this thing to look at, and so it just like hangs in a museum or a gallery, and that's the end of it, right? And so at some point, that's why you have a reduction in it, where it just becomes like splotches of color on a canvas, right? Because it's just
or even with like the new Lilo and Stitch movie, it's like, it was made mostly to make money, but it was also made to release like this like anger. Like, I feel like there's been a lot of backlash, and also to kind of break down the old ways. So there's always an agenda to everything that's being made. It's just a matter of like, are you breaking down something that exists already, or are you building up upon? No, that's exactly that. Yeah, so it's like being a revolutionary or a rebel, where you're just tearing down statues and just tearing things down. Or are you taking what was given to you and using the things that were given to you as a pillar to build up? Yeah. Again. Right? Yeah, that's something I think about all the time when I'm painting. It's like, I have to remind myself, don't reinvent the wheel, and don't be too prideful that you can't, not necessarily copy, but like absorb the artists before you, because like you have that right as a human being to build upon what the thousands and thousands of other years of artists have done over the span of time. But what can you add to that with your personal experience that God has led you through in your life? So like with Dymphna, my agenda with Dymphna was to tell her story in a way that could not only heal me while I'm painting her, but also heal people who have gone through probably the worst experiences I can imagine, like rape and incest surviving, or mental health problems. And how could I make that interesting and appealing and visually delightful to contrast the horror of that experience? And I come out of that a different person. And I want everyone who looks at that to go through that as well. And yeah, I think you can do that with any medium, honestly. With film or music, iconographic music, if that's a thing. Music is such a strange one to me. If you think about it, it's just like an assortment of like, I mean, they're pretty like random sounds that we like put together. And for some reason, some of the sounds make like, there's a rhythm to it. It makes us want to move in funny ways, like dance. And then there's other ones that like make you study better, or almost read like I don't know why, but oh my gosh, I forget the type of lo-fi music. For some reason, if you put that on, like I am 100% focused in on whatever I'm doing, and I don't know what it is about lo-fi that does that. Yeah, and you're like you disassociate in such a. It's very nostalgic, but also hopeful. And it's like one of those genres that they can't really ruin. At least I haven't yet. Maybe they're trying. But I feel like musicians are the people who most closely I feel like they understand like painters. And I say painters more than artists because artist is such a broad umbrella term now. But when I think about like the pain and suffering that comes with painting, I think music is almost like the same thing, just with a different dimension. I'm trying to formulate this, but it's like we make imagery on canvas, but they like make imagery in sound. Like you can't see it or touch it, but it's real. Mm-hmm. And you can't really. Music is so cool. I just.
It's so weird. Yeah.
It's so weird. It's like magical, but like musicians just fascinate me in their minds because it's like you can see into their mind through their work in the same way you can see. Like this is a pretty close. It's not perfectly accurate, but this is very close to like what my mind feels like, and the ability to convey that is just so terrifying and humiliating and humbling and just that's what stunted me for so long and like drove me nuts for a while. It's like I did not want people to see into my mind, and even if I did want them to, I didn't feel like I had the skill to do that properly. It required so much patience because it's like your mind is so, there's just millions and millions of things going on at once, and to slow down and to physically exert myself to make it so that you can see what I'm trying to say. That was, for me personally, that was God. Like I could not do that without him. And yeah, that's all I had to say about that.
What's kind of next for you? So let me see if I can phrase this question. Are you basically staying on a path of, being commissioned for works of like iconography and stuff like that? Do you have any ideas for any of your own maybe passion projects or anything like that you would like to do? What's in store for you next?
I have so many millions of ideas. It's like I don't even think life is long enough for me to do what I want. I mean, I do have a commission coming up to do The Last Supper, which they come to me. I don't choose them. And I'm always so excited when the projects that choose me are the ones that I wanted to paint Dimphna forever. Like even when I was a little kid, I loved Dimphna. I thought her story was so crazy and dark and just like a crazy fairy tale. And she kind of came and like punched me in the face and was like, "You're gonna paint me now." And I was like, awesome. And it was the same with Therese. Like I loved Therese when I was a little girl. So when I had the opportunity to paint her, I was like, yay. But then there are other projects like that challenged me. Like Morgan really challenged me. Our Lady of Sorrows just like wiped me out, and I needed that. But now The Last Supper has come into my life, which is really interesting because I've been talking a lot about the Eucharist with people like you and friends, but I also don't really understand it on a really deep level. It's more kind of just a blind faith. So whenever an icon comes into my life, it's like an invitation from God, like this is your next mission. I want you to understand this deeper so that it can influence the rest of your work. So like Our Lady of Sorrows changed me, Dimphna changed me, and now The Last Supper, it's like we're gonna focus on the individuality of the apostles as best as we can, because I'm sure there are some that don't have as much information on them. But that's going to be kind of my focus probably for the next however many months it takes me to do it. But what I really want to focus on is, should I say this on camera? Is that controversial? Okay. My dream is to bring the duality of Mary and Eve into a fairy tale story. Because listening to Jonathan Pajot and Jordan Peterson talk about archetypes and, the knight and the maiden and the dragon, that would be, I guess that story structure would be a type of Mary, Christ, and the serpent. Like he is our savior, she is the maiden, and the serpent is like the villain in the story. But the thing that's so cool is how we have Adam and Eve as like the precursors to that, and how that is like the all-encompassing story. It's basically a fairy tale, And the most beautiful epic, it hits all the spots. There's like drama, there's tragedy, there's comedy, it's just so beautiful. And how to compartmentalize that into a story structure that would speak not just to millennials, but to just everyone in the 21st century who's grown up watching stories in that film format. That's what I love about film, is that it can take these really big, messy stories. Like when you read old fairy tales, there's a lot going on that can be kind of random. But then when you see it in film format, they have to like make it really punchy, and they can add music, which is even better. Like if you have a score to go with it, like that. If you could go back in time and tell people in the 1800s, like, yeah, you like Brothers Grimm, but imagine reading it to an orchestra, they would lose their minds. I would. So I have crazy religious experiences while watching like the opening of The Lion King. Like, that just brings tears to my eyes.
I actually had an experience. So this is going to sound so corny, but I was watching The Vikings. It's like a History Channel show.
Yeah.
It's I would say it's like historical fiction, so it's based on real life historical figures, but I'm pretty sure they took some creative
is it a documentary or a show?
It's a show. So there's like actors and stuff like that. So it follows basically the Vikings, the ones that swam to like Scotland and England, and that whole kind of drama with that. But there was a scene in there where they he gets the map to the new land, which is England, and so like they sail out to England. They kind of are hesitant whether there really is new land there or not.
Yeah.
And so like they go there and they find this town of monks, and inside they're having a mass, and they obviously kill everyone in there. They take the priest who was in the middle of lifting up the sacrament, and the one Viking guy like takes the hose, he kind of chews it, spits it out, and then like takes the blood and kind of like swishes his mouth and like, gargles in it. And I had such an adverse reaction to it. Like I got like kind of emotional actually. Mm-hmm. And I felt really called to write a poem. And so like I went downstairs and like wrote a poem based on the angel saying, "Be not afraid," right? And so there's a mixture there of thinking like that probably really did happen
all the
at
time.
Several places, right? Like in the middle of the mass or something, like barbarians coming in and desecrating the Eucharist or whatever. But even in those cases, like he's never left us, and there's always this aspect in Scripture and everywhere of do not be afraid. Mm-hmm. Whether it's going out and evangelizing the world, taking on whether it's a career path or like an endeavor you have, or painting, like everywhere through and through, it's like, just do not be afraid, right? And so it's a really amazing knowing that like we should hit the road of life and just like not be afraid. Like that's literally what Christ calls us to, like to not be scared. No matter what demon or dragon comes across their path, like be not afraid.
Yeah, or even like in our case, AI, or
I hate AI.
like those are our barbarians, or rumors of war, or or even if they're not rumors necessarily, but there's a verse in Proverbs, I don't remember what it is, but it's like there are always going to be rumors of war. There's always going to be, and I think about that a lot with everything going on in the world. It's like, in the past, I was very creatively stunted because I was like, oh, we're all going to die anyway. The world's going to end. Like, the enemy is winning, basically. Mm-hmm. But, those monks kept going. Like the Vikings that would trash all the monasteries, those monks still were able to preserve so much history and were able to evangelize those same countries that were terrorizing them,
and kept their stories and cultures too. People forget that it's not the only reason we know the mythologies and stuff of like a lot of these barbarian societies isn't because of them. It's because of the monks and stuff that evangelized them.
Yeah, and that's like what we're doing right now. It's like we are documenting history. Like that's something you ever think about like what your job would be if you lived 1,000 years ago in a village? They say if you want to know your destiny, like what would your job in the village be? I would want to be the illuminated manuscript monk, like just preserving history, drawing cute. And like here's a like Mary like punching a demon or something, like little, Easter eggs.
Yeah.
And we still, just because we have technology doing everything for us doesn't mean that we aren't still obligated to document the good and the bad of what's going on. Because it is very exciting to be alive right now.
It is. It's just very different. So I heard someone explain to me once that the early period of Christianity was a heavy battle of obviously like martyrdom and being physically hurt, whereas the battle now is more of a mental and spiritual battle where most likely, I mean, there's still people in the world that experience it, but many people around the world probably will not experience something like being burnt at the stake or like pulled apart by horses or something.
Right.
But we experience constant distraction, constant like the world's going to hell, like, pushing us towards despair. And distractions through prayer. It's very mental health things. Like that's the battle that like our generation is facing, and it's only going to become like worse and worse and worse.
And that's why she's making a resurgence.
That's why she's
like
here.
she died, thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
And she didn't die with that beheading. It's like she's still here. She's still working today. Like that goes to show you how another example of how like great suffering, like Jesus dying on the cross is still like we're still living in that shockwave.
Oh yeah. I asked actually Father Elias once whether like the crucifixion changed the metaphysics of our world. Like whether it was the world was different beforehand and after he got crucified, whether something changed metaphysically. Whether like we don't even completely understand the Old Testament people because they think, but.
Well, isn't that like actually there's like 4 ages? I don't know if this is in the Bible, but it was like the first like cosmic explosion, for lack of a better term, would be like creation, and the second maybe being the flood, and the third being the crucifixion, and then the fourth is like coming up.
I'm not familiar with. I mean,
I don't know.
all
Don't
those
quote me on that, but I've heard rumors of that kind of thing. Like we're in the fringe of a new age.
These patterns and stuff are always going to. The thing is, like, people think about some of the stories, like the flood or like even Revelation, as it's just like one event, right? It's just like, but our history is in a constant circular repetition, so we're constantly reliving like the pattern of the flood or like of Revelation and stuff like that, right? So like in some way, like somebody dying, they just experienced Revelation, they just experienced the end of the world through their death, right? And so there's always going to be an aspect of like even like the life we once knew, like you can say dying and entering into a new age, right? Where it's like people living in the Bronze Age and kind of like transitioning out of it, like, and living in a whole new world. So like at one point the Bronze Age died and then a new one was reborn, and it's like this flood resurrection kind of story.
And the people living during that time were probably reacting kind of similar to how we are.
Yeah, exactly.
Mental health crisis.
Nervous. I mean, I don't know if mental health was as much. I think it's hard to be like have something like a mental health crisis be a thing when you're like you have to actually go out in nature every day and like like you actually have to work with your hands. So like,
but there's so many accounts of like old saints that deal with like depression and suicidal thoughts. Like not Saint Jerome, like I think Saint Ignatius really struggled with depression.
I know who Saint Ignatius is, but I'm not as familiar with this story.
Well, I've been hearing a lot of stories, and even in the Bible too, like, there's a lot of Psalms of David just being like very emo. So I do think it was definitely, it helps to have nature and physical tasks, and you always have to survive, but we're also human and we're very, philosophical and thoughtful, and we're always going to have moments of like, why am I here? What is this all for? Even if you do have sorcerers bringing people from the dead and like constellations in the sky, and you're just going to be like, but is God real? Like, how do I really know?
Yeah, you're right. I just think of it that we have so much more free time and choice now that it's almost easier to get in that. I don't want to say easier, but to some extent, you can fall into that state more frequently than like when you have to get up in the morning and like collect your chicken eggs and like make milk and stuff. Otherwise, your family's gonna
it's probably worse now. In that, like, to our credit, like, we like to talk about how we're such babies, snowflakes, but it is hard to be alive when all of your needs are relatively met and you just live in your head. Like, it's very hard to get out of that cycle. Like,
no, for sure.
Like, we've experienced it, but imagine if you were like trapped in it. Like, you're in a straitjacket in a hospital. Like, how do you get out of that? Like, how do you turn back? Like, I have family members who are institutionalized. Like, there's no way back, at least unless there's a miracle. But I can't be like, well, it's because you weren't milking cows 100 years ago. We have too much time on our hands. It's like, yeah, but this person is broken. Like, this soul is trapped. That's like a victory for the enemy. So like, how are we going to deal with that? You know, I think icons play a big role, but that's just me personally. So yeah, to our credit, it's hard out here.
It's hard out here.
It's hard on these streets.
I mean, it's always been hard throughout
It's
the
never
ages.
been that good.
Easy to be, human.
And that's another thing. Sorry. That's another thing that makes me mad about the millennial nostalgia thing. It's like, guys, there's never been a perfect time to be alive. I don't know what magical time of the 80s you're wanting to go back to, but back in the 80s, people were complaining too. Like, people are nostalgic now for like the early 2010s. Like, I see these kids on TikTok going like, man, to be a teenager in 2017. I'm like, that was yesterday. Like, we were all whining back then. Like in the 2000s, we were complaining about war, we're complaining about gas prices. It always sucks to be alive. It's like, like this moment, there's so much fun stuff you can do now. Right now, you can we can do this. Like, you used to have to be like a super fancy pantsy person to make something like this. Now you can make TikToks and you can be famous overnight. Like, we have so much. It's like the better things are, the crazier we get.
Yeah, I think life has gotten too. I mean, there's always, I think, a yearning for a simpler life. Like, I think everyone has a yearning for simplicity in some fashion, and for some people that looks like just having a small homesteading farm. For some people that looks like being financially stable and just like doing that. And there's always a sense. I mean, as a child, especially if you grew up with fairly decent parents, there's always a calling for that simpler time as a child. So like, I can sympathize with the fact, like, I always think that back in the early 2000s or the 90s was better, but then my parents will probably say that their childhood era was better than even that. And so there's always a yearning for simplicity. But I mean, I have to say, I mean, all this technology stuff is a lot. Like, I know I do like this podcasting thing, but St. Maximilian Kolbe is kind of somebody that works through me because he used like the radio and stuff to evangelize. But then it was like, back then you did like a radio episode and maybe wrote some articles or something and it was done. Yeah. Whereas here, like, I'll record this, then I'll have to make like short snippets of this to like put that and make sure I put the links in my link tree so that somebody can find it, and then like make sure I put the right tags and everything. It just becomes a lot, you know what I mean? Whereas like, it would be different if we just like, I don't know, like.
Well, soon you'll have AI who can do it all for you.
No, I'm not. I'm never doing that.
And then your brain just completely shrinks.
I use AI for like, I'm a one-man band, so it's very hard for me to like completely be honed in on everything. So like some of the descriptions and stuff I have on these videos, I'll use like AI to make it for me. But I really do. The thing about AI, okay, so you have something like the Karate Kid, right, where he first had to learn to like wax on, wax off, right, before like he got to the thing. What I'm worried about is that like with every new generation, like, for example, there's this like tendency to just like skip the apprenticeship era and try to go straight to the master, meaning like some kids might never learn ever to like write or anything because they can just tell AI to write it for him. And so as the older generations die off, there's very high plausibility they might live that there's an era of humans that don't know how to write with a pen or anything. And
But there are going to be some awakened people who see that and they're like, my kid needs to learn cursive. I need to buy an ink quill pen. And they're like completely on the opposite side and they bring back, you know, they wouldn't have known to do that if there weren't other people like just not learning how to read.
No, I mean,
You know what I mean?
that's true. It's just looking at it as like humanity as like
Splitting.
an overall body kind of thing, and there's like a part mechanization of this human side of what that forgets. Just
But Christ said that was going to
basically-
happen. Like, you know, he came to bring a sword.
Yeah.
And, you know.
But it's so like, you know, me and my like girlfriend talk a lot about this. Like both of us, I'm a little more open to like social media and stuff to some extent. She doesn't like it at all.
Mm-hmm.
But like, as far as children goes, I like completely agree with her that they don't need to be on that at all. Like I much rather them play in the mud and maybe get like ringworm or something in their foot than like talking to some show, than like social media, some creep talking to them, teaching them about some who knows what. So,
100%.
Yeah.
And people are waking up to that too. Because before it's like even probably your age too, like I saw crazy things on the internet at a really young age and still managed to kind of push through. But now it's like even worse. But, you know, there's two sides. Like there's the parents who don't care. And then the parents who are like, actually, I'm going to start taking this really seriously. I'm going to start like reading to them again. I'm going to start, and that's when creativity is really going to come back. It's these parents who start taking it seriously and they're going to start telling bedtime stories and making their kids play in the mud, and adult imagination is going to return. I mean, yeah, there's two sides to every coin. The more dark and dismal and depressing everything gets, there's going to be just an even brighter light of just amazing saints.
No, you're right. I sometimes focus a little bit too much on the bad aspect of things.
Well, I mean, how can you not? You know, but
like,
the sky has to turn red before you can throw the ring down the volcano.
Because I really do view AI as a very I don't even know if it's a word, but basically a de-incarnational thing. Because you're not, the thing is like, at that point, you're not even a sub-creator. You're just like a generator. Mm-hmm. And so like, I mean, I have to admit, even with this digital stuff, like I can't call myself a cinematographer or a filmmaker to the same level that like people that worked on actual film can. Like, I should have, and I mean, I wanted to, I just didn't have access to it. Like, I truly believe that you should definitely learn how to do like the most ancient or basic form of that art before you get to the next like step, or you get to use the tool that makes your life easier. Mm-hmm. Like definitely learn how to use a paintbrush or a pencil before you do any digital iPad art. It's like kind of like my theory, right? Like learn the ritual of where it came from before doing that. Otherwise it kind of loses its
Would you feel like film and cinematography would have like that ancient foundation would be like a form of iconography?
Probably, yeah. I mean, images, and it's a mixture of images and storytelling. So something like I would say something like a lore keeper mixed with a painter.
Yeah, or like even if you were a cave painter trying to tell a story to the kids.
Yeah.
Like that is kind of like film.
Yeah.
Like sequential art.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Maybe that would have been your job in the village. You're the cave painter guy.
or a manuscript person like you, except instead of recording history, I'm just writing a tale about dragons or something.
Yeah, the storyteller, or if there was another word for that, the mythological maker-upper guy.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. The world's definitely getting crazy. So if somebody wanted to commission works from you or follow along with work that you do, where can they kind of follow along or reach out?
I would say for now, just my Instagram is just m.e.huber. I'm working on like a new rebranding because I'm trying to kind of separate my iconography from me and make it like its own thing. But in the meantime, my Instagram is like kind of my diary on this adventure. Like I'm gonna go back to that We're I don't know how to say it correctly, the Greek Orthodox Retreat Center where we study iconography. I'm going there this summer for the intermediate class, so I'm building my way up. But I really want to start sharing the process with the world, because I know a lot of people are interested, and I think it doesn't matter if you're even that great of an artist. If you're drawing pictures of Jesus and Mary, it's going to heal you, and it's going to make you start asking questions and start thinking symbolically and going on this adventure too. And whether that be through iconography, painting, or music, or filmmaking, like, people can just start making things again and start co-creating. I think the world will be a better place. I think that's what Dostoevsky would have wanted. I think that's what Jesus wanted. So yeah, if you want to go on my Instagram and check it out, do it. But yeah, the main takeaway is go make something, go do something.
Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. We were kind of all over the place. It was my first in-person one. I'm the producer and everything, so thank you for your patience and tuning in. But please like and subscribe to the page, and hopefully see you in the next one. And Mary, thank you for coming back and chatting again. It's really interesting to see. I mean, I've never known you when you were making art from your school, when you made more of just animation and stuff.
It's not even worth. That's my Saul era.
But seeing that period where you had that change, where you're yeah, I'm done with that. I'm really interested in iconography, and seeing you actually jump into it is a really interesting journey to see evolve. And I mean, this stuff is really you need to also I don't know, write a fairy tale or a story that has both text and images along with it. Something like Peugeot did with the Snow White and other stuff. That's just.
It's gonna happen. This is just the beginning.
All right. Well, thank you. Make sure you follow Mary here at the Instagram page. I'll have it down in the description, and see you next time.